questions, then I go, right?
Okay, so good afternoon. We continue our program. Hope you had nice networking lunch and refreshing coffee. So we are ready for the next presentation to given by Professor Federica Battisti from University of Padua, yet another friend and collaborator for several European projects, bilateral projects, whatsoever, still collaborating with us, which is a good thing. And the talk is from metrics to users understanding quality of experience in extended reality. So no more automotive.
No, I'm done.
But we jump to more immersive experience. So you see the glasses and
yes
displays.
Now, this is AI generated, so you can see that it's not really plausible, but still. So hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you, Atanas, for inviting me. So as Atanas said, we are slightly changing topic here. So I'm moving towards something that is more related to my research field, that is quality of experience, so how to evaluate it. And then I'll go through something we started developing recently, that is how to put together quality of experience and quality of service. I will be very quick and tackle a lot of things. So if you feel asleep, just raise your hands. I know people there that can help me with that. Before I start, just a short background. I just realized that I don't know all of you, even if I know many of you. So I started my studies, so my master and my PhD in Rome, at Roma Tre University. I don't know, many of you know this place. And this is the first time when I visited Finland in my life, and I visited Tampere. It was 2005 to March 2006. And I did here my master thesis, and at that time, the university was called TUT, so Tampere University of Technology. Then I moved a bit, and now I'm in Padua, so it's a bit harder to locate this city on the map, so I pointed it there. It's a very small city, and it's very close to Venice, and it's famous for spritz, which I think all of you know. As I said, I came here the first time in 2005, so 10 years before the birth of CIVIT. And from there, we actually started some nice collaborations. And it's a long-lasting relationship, the one that I have with this place and with the research people here. So here you have some papers. And Atanas, when I checked these, they're pretty much dated. So we have to, yeah. And the most recent thing we did together is this Marie Curie network, doctoral network. So I was still in Rome at that time. And we had a nice exchange of students, and it was very, very funny. Since I have a long relationship with these people, I also have pictures. Honestly, I have decided to pick only a few of them. So I skipped, let's say, the ones that we don't want to share. And Mr. Robert, this was in 2016, and I think you didn't have the premises, the current premises at that point. And this is the first time I tried an HTC Vive, so a head-mounted display, which is basically the core of the things I'll show you today. And this was super amazing. If you look at my mobile phone, I have plenty of pictures of Robert playing. And this was a small room, much different from what we have today. And then you have Olli playing with his Lego bricks, which I think still does. He's not here, but I think he still does it. And then there's an important...
Test scenery.
Yes. And the last, yeah, you can see, you cannot see that much. You have all the arm on top of Olli. And then there's the last member that I want to introduce. She's been there since the very beginning. And I mean, I'm pretty scared of that one, but I'll skip it. As Atana said, there's sauna, which is a very relevant, bonding component. And Atanas, you are that one. That was one of our events in 2018. I don't remember exactly which was I can retrieve it. But also, we like to play with interesting stuff. This Olli was in charge of that. So this was part of the Immersafe project. And we kept working together, so the collaboration continued. And this was also my first conference after COVID. So this was October 2021. So Tampere hosted MMSP. And more recently, you can see in the shadow there is someone looking at the light field screen that Atanas was showing earlier. So this is a part of a research that is ongoing with Robert and Kamran and Emanuele now. So 2024, I'm not mentioning, I mean, we just submitted a proposal for a Marie Curie doctoral network, so fingers crossed. And this is what I wanted to show very quickly. Then if you want to see the other pictures, come ask me. I started here, my research. Actually, I wanted to drop university at some point. Then I came here and I found out, wow, that's amazing research. So I decided to continue with a PhD, and then I continued more or less also the topics that I tackled in that period. So what I'm working on is visual attention models for immersive media, which I'm not going to go through today. I've been working quite extensively in subjective quality assessment and also in the definition of quality models for different types of media. Recently, in our group, we're also working on multisensory multimedia, so how to use, for example, touch, adding touch, for example, to virtual reality experiences. The last one, that is basically what I'll try to go through quickly today, is about the interaction between QoS and QoE. So let's start. The first thing is introducing what when I'm talking about extensive reality. I think you're all people in this field, so you should know. Basically, when I'm talking about extended reality, I'm referring to a lot of different things, starting from augmented reality, that is basically overlaying some graphical objects into the real world, till something that is completely virtual, as it is the virtual reality. So these things are actually far from what we saw in the morning in the automotive session, but CIVIT is working also on ways to put those things together, like Immersafe, the doctoral network we had, was going in this direction. So why do we want to tackle this? For sure, because there is an increased interest. Sometimes I look at those figures that change pretty much year by year, but the XR market is increasing, and this is because there are a lot of applications that can benefit from this type of technologies. Just to mention a couple of them, there's, for example, the healthcare application. So you might have, for example, medical doctors that can be trained, or, for example, nurses that can be trained together to understand what are the best practices to use in specific scenarios. Similarly, there's also all the market that is moving somehow in using this type of technologies. Like there's, I don't know if you bumped into that, there's Ray-Ban, the famous sunglasses, that is providing the possibility of wearing via an augmented reality version of their glasses, so that you can go to their website, try them on, and see if they fit. This can be used for check-in. If you want to rent an apartment that is far away, you can have virtual visits, and so on. So those are just two of them. There's gaming and many other more serious applications that can be used. Well, what I'll try to cover today are two aspects of this big multimedia chain. This is very, very general, and it doesn't cover everything that is happening. But what I want to focus on is starting from the content, multimedia content, and then it goes through a number of steps: acquisition, pre-processing, compression. Then all this stuff has to be transmitted or stored. So for the moment today, we'll focus on transmission, and then there's some post-processing that includes the compression, rendering, and then there's the final user. So what I'm working on is exactly this last part, so the users, because typically when we are developing our methods, we are targeting the final user. So we want something that is pleasant to see. So in some cases, it's really important to have not only the technology that is supporting this, but also to make sure that what this technology delivers is kind of liked by the user itself. A big failure case was the one given by 3D. So I guess you remember this. It was Avatar, it arrived, and everyone was super excited by these 3D technologies. And I remember going to the supermarket and finding a lot of 3D televisions that you could buy with prices that were reasonable. And a lot of research was focusing on this 3D. But eventually, 3D changed. Let's say it didn't fail completely, but it changed over the years. And this is something that had already happened, because 3D is something that was tried in the 19th century, and then a few decades later, but still we had to wait 2009 to see the first reasonable and acceptable experience of 3D. Anyway, if I ask you, how many of you like to go watching a 3D movie? Still someone. Also, but you are the olders. That's the age factor that counts. Morten. But yeah, I saw a lot of heads saying, yeah, not really. And there are many reasons for that. For sure, you have technology issues, like if you're wearing already glasses, then you have to put glasses on top, and it gets a bit annoying. And because there are a lot of, let's say, physical issues that happen, and like factors that are not necessarily technological, but created by the technology. And those are like discomfort. Again, you need to wear these special glasses. A lot of people experience health issues like dizziness or strain in the eyes. This is something that comes pretty often. Then you can have poor visual quality, because we know that when you're using those glasses, typically you lose color information. And the real truth is we don't have a real demand for that. We, for example, like having a 3D content that you can scroll on your 2D screen, but having a 3D model or something that requires you to wear an extra device might not be super comfortable. So at that point, this is when so Avatar came, we learned our first lecture. And the lecture is that, of course, technology has to be improved, like the HTC Vive that Robert was wearing in the first slide are have a limited field of view, limited resolution with respect to what we have 10 years later. But definitely, there was the birth of a new concept, that is the concept of the quality of experience. So till that moment, the main issues, the focus on the quality of service, meaning if I have a telecommunication service, everything was measured in that service. So for example, which is the jitter, which is the delay. There were measurable quantities that of course affect the perceived quality, but definitely the human, the user, was not put at the center of these studies. So there was a jump. Actually, this was the first definition was in 2013 of something that is called quality of experience, that was later reformulated in 2020 to consider all these new immersive media. And I have highlighted some words, some keywords. So we have delight or annoyance. You have the user in the center, you have the immersive media experience, and then you have like the toughest things that you might want to measure. Those are the expectations, utility and or enjoyment of the application, and the user's personality and current state. You already see by reading this definition that this task of evaluating somehow and preparing a model for QoE that can be generic, can be applicable to a lot of people, can be a bit tricky. And there are many groups that are working towards the definition of this quality of experience in several ways. So how can we measure it? If we have to do subjective tests, what are the guidelines that we have to follow? What are the models? Are there mathematical models that can be defined? Well, here I listed like the main ones. You can see that all these big groups that I'm pretty sure you all know, so from Qualinet, that maybe is less known, to JPEG, IEEE, ITUT, all of them are putting effort in defining some guidelines to help us solving these big issues. So we started back in 2010 with a lot of questions. And especially when these new devices, this new media appeared, we started thinking, but is it the same? I mean, if we want to evaluate the quality of like a 3D content or a multi-view content, is it the same that evaluating the quality of a 2D content? There were a lot of open questions, and honestly, there are still many open questions. And then what we did at the very beginning is resorting to the state of the art, saying, okay, so far, till now, how has been quality assessed? Well, with a lot of metrics, and I'm sure you tried at least two of them, or three, the big ones in the main screen. But since the 90s, a lot of different quality metrics for 2D content have been defined. So by a quick look on the IEEE database, those are the numbers that you get. Only for quality assessment, roughly 45K results. And of course, when I ask you, how do you evaluate the quality of something that you did? Your answer, most probably and sadly, will be PSNR, SSIM, and we still complain. So as a multimedia, as a quality, as a people working on quality, we said, yes, PSNR, but it's not so good. But still, we struggle a lot. Recently, there have been other metrics like BMF for video that started going towards the right direction of modeling the human perception. So if the things are already kind of messy, then things get even worse when we start adding dimensions. So especially when we're talking about immersive media, what we are referring to is a system like the one that you see depicted here. So there is this nice scheme that is called AAP. This is the AAP cube that tells us that if you have, for example, a virtual reality environment, a virtual reality application, what you have to do is to find the right balance between these three components that are autonomy, interaction, and presence. So autonomy means that once you are in the virtual reality, you can basically move around and be active in the environment without external guidelines. Then you have interaction, so you might need to grab objects, move objects, or anyway interact with this virtual environment. And in the end, presence. This is like a magic word. If you look on Merriam-Webster, you Google it, this word doesn't exist. But in that case, what we're meaning with presence is having the feeling of being exactly in a specific, in the specific place in the virtual world. So we know how to evaluate 2D quality or rather fidelity. And now the problem here is we are adding different components that need to be measured. And it's very hard to find a mathematical model that is able to estimate that. So the first job was simply to start looking into what are the elements that can actually be included in our quality evaluation. So presence is the one that I just commented, and immersion is, tightly coupled with presence. Then we have cyber sickness, so how to evaluate the problem that can eventually can appear when you're using this type of devices. And there are other things. One of those is the cognitive load. So if you are using a VR system, but also if you're using any type of device, also 2D, it's really important that the amount of information that you get is reasonable for being, let's say, processed. Because if you get too many information, then you won't be able to understand what is needed, what is not needed. You'll struggle, and then you won't want to use it. So there's a way. We need to measure this. Also, how easy is the interaction? If you have ever tried VR, sometimes it can be not so straightforward. You need some training, and this is not something that is suitable. So this is something that needs to be measured. And similarly, the comfort. If the head-mounted display is too heavy, if the refresh rate is low, then your eyes will itch. So there will be a lot of different aspects that need to be incorporated. Once we ended up saying, okay, we need to find a way of evaluating these metrics here, these factors here. Then we didn't know how to do that. Because basically, the thing that we do, and I've done quite many of them, I see Cameron, you're laughing. The thing that we have to do in these cases is to run subjective tests. So if we don't have a model for evaluating the quality of something that is new, like I'm thinking also to all this Gen AI content that are appearing now, how to evaluate their quality. This is a very open research question. So what you do is basically you run subjective tests and you ask people, how much do you like it? How much do you like what you're seeing? This looks pretty boring because you need to have a lot of people. And I know many of you participated to subjective tests. So it's time consuming, you need to have space, resources. So then in Italy, we don't pay students. Typically here, we give like cinema tickets or chocolate. While in Italy, we just use the poor students to participate to those with the reward of playing. So what happens is, if we want this thing to be useful, we need to have some guidelines, some protocols that are telling us, okay, that's the way you have to run the test. This is the way if another lab somewhere else in the world wants to replicate your result, they will be able to do it because they can reproduce the same environment. And here is the catch. We don't have guidelines. So far, there are no guidelines available in the state of the art, very few of them. And when it comes to extended reality, we have only these three standards that are available. And as you see, one is influencing factors on quality of experience for virtual reality. The other one, G1036, is for augmented reality. And there is another one that is QoE assessment of extended reality XR meetings. That's all we have. And what they're telling us is basically how to measure all the factors that I've shown you earlier. So if I'm running subjective tests, how to set them up correctly, and how to measure the factors that I listed earlier, all those features. The answer till now is that, of course, we don't have a metric, but we have questionnaires. So if you look in the state of the art, you will find out that if you want to evaluate, for example, discomfort or presence or immersion, you have a lot of questionnaires. Like if you go with the first one, that is one of the most commonly used, is called Simulator Sickness Questionnaire. It basically measures the quality. Do we have a pointer here? Okay. We have basically 16 different discomforts that the person might feel, and then you ask the people on a scale of from 1 to 5, how much did you feel, for example, fatigue? And they will score it. And this is something that you have to replicate a lot of time during the test. Or, for example, social presence. There's a bunch of standardized questions in questionnaires that can be asked. So basically, currently, if we want to run subjective tests for XR, this is what we have to do. Basically, ask people how they're feeling. So you see, this is not really super comfortable. And then things started changing, because when immersive media started appearing, there is another component that came into this scheme. So while before we simply focus on the user, so does he like it? No, how can we improve that? Then there was something else that came into place, which is typically transmission. So if you have tried VR again, or if you work with that, those devices don't have a lot of computational capabilities. So if you want to do things that have, are intensive in computing with a very high resolution, typically you have to plug them to a computer. So transmission starts being relevant. Also, if you're gaming, you know that there are many cloud services that are using transmission to deliver content to the head-mounted display. So basically, this is something that started being investigated also in the networking community. So the 3GPP group defined the standard for mobile VR, in which they set some guidelines for the accepted latency that is okay not to have people being sick. So this is a QoS, a quality of service requirement that reflects on the quality of experience. And there's also the round trip time that is also set in specific scenarios. On the other hand, we know that modifying the parameters, the network parameters, will have an effect on the quality of experience. So there is this moment in which we started talking, the networking with the multimedia, and we said, okay, let's put our efforts together and see if we can give some, models for QE that also exploit the knowledge about the QoS. The result is a data set. The first thing that we did was a data set because the real problem we had is that there were no data sets that could provide at the same time like results on questionnaires or quality assessment, and at the same time measure, for example, the traffic exchange between the head-mounted display and computer. So what we did is, again, take 60 of our students, and we let them play. They kind of liked it. We asked them to play 4 commercial games because we wanted something that was ready. Because when you develop your own games or environments, it can be tricky. But then we said, let's use something that is well established and is already a product. And basically, we recorded the data packets that were exchanged between the headset and the computer, the position of the head, and then some basic information together with simulation sickness questionnaire. What we found out super quickly, those are just some results, when we confirmed that, yes, the traffic that is exchanged is pretty intensive, but especially that beside the fact that we selected something that was already built in, well established in the state of the art, then there was some discomfort happening. So still, there's space for understanding why those things appear and how to counteract the presence of these errors, of this discomfort. We also started thinking, how can we put together the information about movement, for example, and traffic? As a side result, for example, we managed to identify users by simply measuring the traffic they exchange. It's a very simple approach that we tried, but we managed to identify pretty nicely the users. So we also started investigating eventual security threats that this type of devices offer. Similarly, we started to analyze if there is a connection between the movement and the presence of cyber sickness. So we recorded the traces of the head movement of the person while playing, and then we gave a representation. I'm not going through the details. I know I'm late. So this will be submitted to ICIP 2026. Come, it's going to be fun. And so we noticed that basically by looking at the head movement, we could predict the presence or not of cyber sickness. So this can be something interesting to define new systems and avoid people feeling sick, which is something that happens pretty commonly. And the last thing we're doing, this is actually something that is ongoing, is trying to add latency. So we know that we have some, there are some values that we can accept of latencies. So we try to push people to play the same game. This is a music game, so you have blocks getting closer to you, have to smash them, following the music. And what happened here is that we try to add latency. This means that the block start coming, and then your reaction appear very slow in the virtual reality, and you get stressed. And something happened. We have to study it because we only have 16 users so far. The funny thing is that if people start with very high latencies, so 150 milliseconds, that is almost 3 times the maximum recommended by the 3GPP standard, people basically get adjusted. So they play with this big delay latency, and then when you provide the same game with 0 latency, they will miss the blocks. So this is something interesting to see how we adjust to the conditions and how quickly this thing happen. I'll go super quick. I think I'll just give you an information about that, but I'll skip it in sake of time. Something that I told you that is getting more relevant in these days is to put together quality of service and quality of experience. And this is something that actually has been there in the past years. It's not like a super hot new topic, but this is the moment in which those studies are getting very, very relevant. So we started working, as you see, with a lot of nice people. So we have partners from industries that are both content service providers and content application providers. So you have like Meta, AT&T, Nokia, Telefonica, Ericsson, TikTok, YouTube, Avec. And then you have a lot of research centers and universities. And we decided to investigate how to improve the end-to-end quality of experience in a system by controlling the QoS. And this is done for 3 types of application that are the most commonly used, and actually the one of interest of the companies, content service and content application providers. So we had Zoom meeting, in general, interactive application that are teleconferences, then long and short form videos. We started by looking into a general structure in which you have the user that is using an application. So you have the user that is partially controlled by the content application provider, because we're using applications that are provided by the content application provider. Then we have the content service provider, and again, the infrastructure of the content application. What's the big catch here is that CAP, content application, and content service provider don't really have a clear view of what is happening in these parts of the network. So I'll go quickly to the result. The idea here is to make them talk somehow and give continuous feedback from one to the other in order to enhance the overall QoE. How this can be done? This is the case of interactive services. So basically, content application provider are the first one. So as soon as the user starts using an application, they have to expose some information to the CSP. So receive video quality, quality of interaction metrics, rate adaptation ladders, so all information that are available and can be measured at the user side. Those are sent directly to the content service provider that will act and can adjust. If he has this information on the perceived quality level, then they can adjust, for example, the bandwidth or any way allocate the resources in a proper way. And at the same time, they will provide network availability and network allocation. This will help the content application provider to measure the information that is streamed to the user. So super quickly, the idea here is giving some guidelines. This is what we need right now. So this white paper that we prepared goes in this direction of creating a communication between content service and content application providers for these specific use cases that we targeted. I have it with me. Yesterday, we completed the last revision. So if you want to have a look, I can share with you the final white paper. Last thing, maybe I can skip it. I'll just mention that. The thing can get more complex if we add another dimension, that is the interaction between people. So we saw this when Peter was showing this holographic meeting among people. So imagine everyone being in virtual environment and being able to interact not only with the object, but only in between themselves. In this framework, we just released a recommendation, so you're welcome if you want to do your tests. This is ITU-T P1321, and this gives guidelines for running subjective tests in case you want to measure the quality of interaction. So I'll go straight to my conclusion. Here you have some examples of things we did, questionnaire that we are recommending, but the message that I wanted to deliver today is that the problem of addressing quality maybe today is more visible because we are using devices that are strongly putting the users inside the loop. So what we have to do is to have a clear idea on how to measure that And for this, we need like standardized approaches and standardized guidelines. And this is what we're doing. Then the next step would be to find suitable quality models that can be applied without the need to undergo long and exhausting subjective testing. There's also another big new thing that is putting together words that were not really well connected earlier, so networking and multimedia. And this is something that is very active in the research field nowadays. So those are the people that participated to the work that I presented here. And thank you for listening to that. And I'm happy to take questions.
Questions?
Don't ask me the question quality.
Yes.
I know.
I think this is a very interesting topic. I think it's very important for someone like me who's really developing the technology to present, not. So I need to know what quality is. But then we also started to look into what do we think is quality. You mentioned Avatar here, and I saw it in 3D, and I really liked it. So yeah, fantastic with all these things. And then I thought, had I liked it without the 3D? And I said, yes, because the content was important.
Yes.
The 3D itself was not so important. And I'm questioning now, how much does the context, how much does the enjoyment of seeing this, experiencing XR, how much is the novelty, like in the video, in the cinema, the 3D, it comes every 30 years. So 2040 we will have 3D in the cinema again.
Yeah, let's see.
It's every generation. And ease of use, is it complicated to get these things going? What is the plan to incorporate these things into the quality of experience?
I think we discussed this somehow already, and I really think that the application overall is what is important. Like if you watch a 3D movie, I watched Avatar both in 3D and in 2D. In 2D, the colors are amazing, so I think that was super good. And I remember watching it in 3D every now and then. I removed the glasses because I wanted to see it. So in that case, yes, but you also know that 3D movies get wow if you have these objects that are going out, right? This is where you feel wow. But this is also the thing that is more tiring as viewers, right? So you can have very few if you're watching a movie. So that's purely entertainment, and maybe we're good with 2D. This is how we are used to. While if you move to this extended reality, I'm thinking about VR because this is the thing for which we have most common content and application. It depends for what you're going to use those applications. So if you find suitable ones, I mentioned the doctors at the very beginning. So like I have doctors in Padua because, from the university in the doctoral school, medical doctors. So they told us that they would really need these devices, and they're developing their own, for example, to learn procedures. And they say for us it's very costly to do specific things in the real world and create, real-time simulation. So if you could have VR, this would work nicely. And they're pushing a lot. Sometimes I tell them, come on. It's hard. You don't see what we have to do in order to make this thing happen. But this is an application where things will work. Remote meetings, I feel it's boring because I don't see the added value. I mean, Zoom, Teams, I don't know what you're using, is enough. And sometimes we lose synchro between audio and video. The connection drops. So that's not the case. So the answer, yes, I think context is important, and especially the application for which the application that you're targeting, but not for everything. We'll keep discussing that. I know Morten forever and never.
Thank you for the interesting talk. And I think that the user experience
might affect how much they feel comfort and how easy to control. How does it, like, does the age group actually denote for the such kind of user experience, or how you evaluate those?
So let's say that age is a factor, but what we found is that anyway, if you want to use these devices, you need the training. And training is like fundamental because it doesn't come natural. And for some people, it's more frustrating. And typically, let's say, older people struggle a bit more to adjust. But in general, this is not something that you wear it for the first time. I mean, if you wear it and you see something 360, yeah, you say, wow, it's nice. Then if you ask people to do things, this requires some adaptation. So training is a very important thing that has to be considered. So age, yes, but I would say training solves these issues.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the presentation. Samuel Hiltunen from LUT University. What is the take on the increasing implementation of AR technologies and extended reality technology in, for example, heavy mobile machinery? And especially, is there a way to have a kind of a concrete methodology or a process to model the cognitive load when you add more information through these devices to new environments?
Yeah, that was partially what we started investigating with Atanas in the previous doctoral network. So the way we have it now, okay. First thing first, I mentioned all these features that you can measure, but I haven't mentioned one important thing is that this is very task dependent. So depending on what you want to use this application for, that you have to tune, for example, the questionnaires that you ask. So far, I would say if you want to do that, you need to have some questionnaires, dedicated questionnaires. And like we did always for this doctoral network, we work with firefighters. Okay, so we were training them in emergency situation. There's an earthquake and you have to go and rescue people. And this is something for which they're typically trained with papers. So we had two groups. A group was trained on papers, traditional, and the other one was trained with VR. And actually they liked it, but they say, you know what? It's super cool, it looks nice, but we prefer the traditional way. So if you want to do that for the specific case, I think this can be done, but you have to figure out exactly which is your audience, and then accordingly ask the questions. And then eventually, based on this, you can, go on and work in improving the system, if this was the question. Somewhat, okay. Yes.
You can continue offline, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I was
Okay,
alone.
last question.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm from the Interreality Research Group at Tampere University, and our focus is on XR as well. So this presentation on how to measure the QoS and QoE is really important for this immersive experience. And I was wondering, because questionnaires sometimes are the result of users' interpretation, and also if the process, especially when the questionnaire process is repeatedly, like several times in the same experiment, it could be quite annoying. So I was wondering, would it be possible to combine some physiological data, or would you consider to combine some of these physiological measurements?
Yes, that's a good question.
Thank you.
There are two parts. Let's say the first is about questionnaire. So in our recommendation, actually, we also developed like compact questionnaires, like the 16 points evaluation. If you have to ask it before they start, like after the first session, after the second, it will take forever. They will hate it and they will just rank things randomly, so this won't work. So we found a way of shrinking the number of questions. And second thing, having a lot of people helps, and shuffling conditions, this is basic of subjective testing. Physiological measurement, if you're using XR, then you can put other devices on top. because this isn't the way you measure, physiological parameters, but this will mean adding, let's say, discomfort, because like we tried with EEG, which is kind of, invasive thing, and then we tried also with the smartwatches to measure the heartbeat, but this is not always super interesting. I mean, you can have some data, but not so much. So let's say we want the system to be not invasive at all, so that people already wearing the head-mounted display for VR or AR, whatever, don't have to wear other devices. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you once more.
Okay, I'll be around if you have other
Yes,
questions.
keep Federica busy during the networking session. Yeah,
Very cool.
And maybe you will get answer to your question with the next talk